A big hello to everybody. And on March 8th, we'll be celebrating International Women's Day. And although in the West and most developed countries, in law and on paper, there's gender equality, the truth, as we all know, is not quite the same. And I'm very lucky to have Dace here as a guest to discuss this topic with me. Furthermore, Dace is a lawyer, so knows all the legal ins and outs about the subject. Dace, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me, Nadia. And well, what I can say is that I'm admitted to the bar for 25 years now, and I've been consulting governments and parliaments, ministries of candidate countries to the European Union on the correct transposition of the European law into the national legislation so that they can be admitted to the full European membership. So I got to know quite a lot of requirements that are needed to be fulfilled, also on the national legal level, to be in accordance with what the European Union expects from a country. Also with regard to the gender acquis, as it is called. But as we all know, in former times, you could say women probably don't have the right qualifications, they don't have the right experiences. But nowadays, there are, we all know at universities, it's almost 50-50 male, female students. And the ladies have good marks, good diplomas, go into the jobs. And that after some time, and at a sudden, when they become mothers, they have a family, they realize that their colleagues from university times, their male colleagues, are passing them by and making careers, whereas they have partly chosen family life. And they see that somehow they have probably formal equality with their colleagues, but in reality, it doesn't look like that male and female have the same chances in life. And what we are talking about is, in principle, the equal chance to participate in social life, in political life, in economic life, also depending on your own faculties, on your abilities, on your qualifications. And women often wonder, I've got so many qualifications, I've even got more qualifications than my male colleagues, but I still don't go forward and I'm not promoted. And of course, you start thinking, what is the reason for all this? And I would say that even though women are very qualified, they sometimes lack the network, for example, and they lack the promotion by employers, etc. And also, I think they encounter the problem with the stereotypes that you're expecting male as your boss or as bosses, because that's a psychological, there's something behind that, that you always think of a male when you think of a boss. And this is something that has developed over the centuries. When you're reading novels, etc., it's always the prince on the horse and the beautiful lady waiting to be saved. And I think times have changed, and got also some superwomen. So these superwomen that have developed, they should get their equal chance as well. And I think to remind people of that on the 8th of March is a good moment for that. But because we know that there's still, even there is a requirement to pay the same wages to women as for male. We all know the statistics that there's still a gender pay gap. And what people always forget at the same time also is that it's not just a gender pay gap, but it's also a pension gap.
Mhm.
So it adds up. And I have only the figures for Germany, but it ended up with that it's not only something around, I don't want to lie, let's say 20% or so less in the wages, the pay gap, but it ends up with a pension gap of 50%. If it's adding up because women are working only part-time, and in some countries, women for a certain period in their life, because of children, because of family, but because also probably of care work, to care for parents, they are on a part-time job, and therefore, of course, they don't get remunerated. And that's also one problem, that care work at home doesn't get any remuneration. So when you are calculating GDP, it's very strange that this unpaid work, of course, it's not calculated in GDP, even though it's a lot of hours you are spending with this care work. And what I found quite interesting also, I hope I will find the right quotation to that. It's taken from Haskell Westlake, Capitalism Without Capital. And there it is, I can quote, GDP excludes production activities by households. Washing your own car, clothes, or dishes is not production. Paying a cleaner to do so is production. This can create anomalies. When a man marries his cook, GDP falls. It's just the same activity. So there are also, of course, economists who have started the debate if something like this should be calculated as well, because this unpaid work never gets some kind of how should I say social. You don't have any social rights to a higher pension or something like that. That is not somehow remunerated to some extent. So it is on women. They share the burden, but they don't get paid.
No, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt you. I absolutely agree with you. Women play, vital roles at home. Doing household chores. Sometimes, if there's children, they are the carers, and like you said, in the families, they take care of parents. But interestingly enough, I did read an article recently of a political party in India, which is running on a campaign where it will give wages to household, I guess, I don't know if the right word is housewife, but for work done at home by women. So I just wanted to mention that, but I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
Yes, that's a very good idea to empower women, because this financial independence is also quite important. But that is another issue. But to come back to this, last time I spoke to you, I was quoting from Paris. She's written a book, Invisible Women. I don't have the book next to me. No.
Well, Invisible Women. So people can search for that book. Yes, go ahead.
Paris, and that's Invisible Women. And she has also got and gathered some statistics regarding this housework. And the University of Michigan study found, for example, that husbands create an even extra 7 hours of housework a week for a woman. But that, of course, is depending on the cultural region. It can be more, it can be less, but it's in general, it is always more. And there was something even more interesting, that an Australian study found that housework time is most equal by gender for single men and single women. When women start to cohabit, their housework time goes up while men's goes down, regardless of their employment status. That means when both are full-time working, it is still the woman's duty to do all the housework. But that is not paid, as I said. So
doesn't seem fair.
Not much has changed, but there is it has in Scandinavia I've seen statistics that the partners are sharing more of the burden, and I think the more supportive your partner is, you as a woman, you can of course more participate in economic life, in social life, also in political life. It's the same with political parties. all these meetings of political parties, they take place in the evenings. And when you are a mother with little children, you will never be able to participate in these evening meetings where they are drinking the beer and debating on political concepts. You are not able to participate. And I think a lot of it really depends on the goodwill of men. And I, in that respect, I really would like to invite all men to be supportive, to be more inclusive and more diverse, because the world is 360%, and we should look at it not only from one perspective, but also from the women's perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's on a previous time you showed me a cartoon, which I like very much, of a race.
Oh yes, oh yes, yes. I don't want to forget that. That's also, I think, quite a funny note on this whole subject.
Yeah.
Here you can see
The laundry, the cooker, the iron, the washing machine. Yes, all, unfortunately, all unfairly, the work, in couples is unfairly divided, and the woman has to do most of it. Well, hopefully, like you said, this is changing, and there are men who are supporting their women, which is great.
I know men who are really doing the best they can, and so I don't want to blame. Don't want to blame or bash anybody in that respect. But it would be nice if they could start on the 8th of March with it.
Oh, yes, definitely. So, yeah, so I think we've said what a lot of women know, that although on paper there is gender equality, but unfortunately in practice, it's not quite the same thing. And it shows that when more women participate in the economy, it's a good thing for everyone. GDP grows. So it's only in everybody's interest. So that's what we'll keep working towards, and I know that you've been working towards that for much of your life, so that's great. Well, with that, I'd like to thank Dace very much for her time, and remind you all that on March 8th, on Internations, 6 p.m. London time, 7 p.m. Central European time, we'll be meeting to discuss and celebrate International Women's Day. Have a lovely evening, Dace, and thank you again.
You too. Thank you for having me.